Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of Dialogue Horizon. In this episode, we will cover as much as we can the ceremonial event, the opening of the talks, peace talks in Juba by the transitional government and the commander of SPLA North, Commander Abdulaziz Al-Hilo. So the event was actually important, and it was addressed by top officials in the two countries, in Sudan and South Sudan. I'm glad to host in this episode two important persons who are really inside, right in the middle of the conflicts of Sudan. One of them is our friend Dr. Zuhair Bashar. Actually, Zuhair Bashar is specialized, graduate from University of Khartoum, but is specialized in England in conflict resolutions. Conflicts, and we have a lot of conflicts to be resolved. So, welcome, Dr. Zuhair. And we have our engineer, activist in the revolution. He played a very important role. He's engineer Muhammad Farouk Salman. Also, we will right in the middle of the whole incubator of the revolution, the civilian incubator. So we start by Dr. Zuhair. Dr. Zuhair, of course, you followed the opening ceremony of the Juba talks with between the government of Sudan and SPLA North leader Abdulaziz Al-Hilo. This is a very important event because it is a completion to what was signed in Juba last year in October, 3rd of October in Juba. The peace talk signed and ratified by almost half of the insurgency of the country. So what is your impression from what you heard, especially from the opening speeches of Major General Burhan, the chairman of the Supreme Council, and His Excellency Salva Kiir, President of South Sudan, and Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok. So of course we want to have your impression from being specialized or a specialist, different, you have a different eye, different than others. From what you heard, what is your impression?
Thank you very much, Engineer Omar Al-Bakri Abu Harad. I'm delighted to be part of this session, and I would like to thank you, thank the viewers, and I would like to thank your guest, Ustad Muhammad Farouk, as well, and I'm pleased to be here. My first impression about the opening session, it looks great. It looks great because it has involved all the actors. If you look to the government of the Sudan, the top head of the government, Mr. Al-Burhan was there, the Prime Minister was there, and there is a lot other ministers who were there. The representative of the Freedom and Change Forces were also there, in addition to the UN, African Union, and other partners. This gives an impression that they are all very keen for this process to go ahead and to complete the peace in Sudan, because the Juba Peace Agreement is still incomplete. So this looks as they are pushing ahead to complete it. The speech were very strong. They reassured their already expressed commitment, whether President Al-Burhan or Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok or the others, all of them, even Abdulaziz Al-Hilo, they re-stress and reassured that they are committed to peace, and in a very strong words. So it gives me an impression that they are all serious, and they want to give a strong impression that they are going ahead on this path of peace.
Okay, that's very good. I think it is important also. You reminded me of something very important. Maybe Muhammad Farouk will cover it. beside my question about the previous bilateral agreement signed between Burhan and Abdulaziz Al-Hilo, also the presence of Engineer Muhammad Farouk, the presence of the United Nations mission. Volker, Mr. Volker was there, and the American envoy. There was a presence of those who are really working hard to bring back Sudan to the international community. So they were also present, they were also keen to be there, they are also keen to push things. Do you think this is something conducive to reaching an agreement? This external element.
Yeah, I always, as you know, Engineer Omar, let me first salute you and the viewers, and happy Eid for all of us. And we hope that I would like to look optimistic, just as my colleague here, for this session of talk. I guess the existence of the international community there will play a good role by many aspects, but the major role, as we always know, is the national element, and this is actually done through a big penetration by the signature of Burhan and Al-Hilo, the declaration of principle earlier that address the issues that been all stuck in on it since the start of Cuba peace talk agreement. The viewer and everyone should know, SPLM North, led by Al-Hilo, was there in Cuba. Its negotiation team was there for a very long time. No penetration made because of, I do believe, FFC role. Or how is FFC, the civil front. And I was there, as you recall, last year in February, and unfortunately we signed as a political party, not as a coalition, as FFC, a declaration of principle with Al-Hilo. And then there is a big start for many civil movement before this huge step made by Burhan that reflects the transitional government will and actually in a serious move towards peace. But there was a big movement, including many factions and many fractions and many components of FFC. FFC now, I guess, one of the most important things that this process that's happening in Cuba now will address and will come as, I do believe that it will be like a byproduct of a comprehensive concept of peace. We should over the mistakes made in Cuba agreement with SRF, that many points needed to be readdressed again. The violation of the constitution document, we need to rewrite it in a new political process that reflects the will of the Sudanese people and the revolution partners. We should always look at the armed movement as partner of the revolution itself, though it is a peaceful and non-violence. We should be very proud of it, how it ended the NIF regime, but we should actually give them the credit that they've been with us in this struggle for Sudan freedom, peace, and justice. And this is how I do think for what being done in March, even between Prime Minister Hamdok and Al-Hilo in Addis Ababa, the declaration being made there. Actually, it addressed one issue. If we look again to what done with Burhan, that was more inclusive. It addressed actually the declaration of principle being presented by Al-Hilo earlier from the start of the negotiation, and no one gave a positive reply for that. And this is why I'm looking for this talk now, as we have many things that we already agree on it.
So actually,
hopefully, yeah.
So you actually believe believe that one of the big hurdles that
Yes.
achieved or overcome by the signature of Burhan too, which is the state, the secular state or the civil state. This is one of the issues, the muddy issues, which made the signing of the agreement with Hamdok and Al-Hilo in Addis Ababa.
It is included in Burhan.
Now it is included
in Burhan with other principles in
so
the
this
declaration.
is more comprehensive, more inclusive.
Yes, more inclusive.
Which will help, will facilitate the...
For sure. Now I think they are discussing the framework agreement. From my relation with SPLM and from Ammar himself, that they are saying once we agree on the declaration of principle, there will be no big problem with the framework agreement. We will go directly on the details negotiation about the implementation and the commitment of having. And if you can remember, I'm sorry, just
Yeah, that's okay.
this is very important, the declaration made by Al-Hilo. He mentioned a very good issues that related to how the transitional having suffering from some deficiencies for sure for the people now, and how we can see that the distance between the government itself and the street and the masses of the people. He addressed the issues that concern those people, because he's talking about the impunity, he's talking about the delaying of justice, the in-serious movement regarding reforming of justice institute, and even from Juba agreement there was a commitment that all of those who are included in Darfur crimes should be sit under the ICC court authority, and they should start the trial there, not necessary in Lahai or outside Sudan, but it is being agreed, but no actually any step on implementing this being happened. And this is one of the points that we come to these talks, while many I do believe many stake points not moved in the previous peace agreement.
That's very good. That's good. Dr. Zuhair, so having heard Engineer Muhammad Farouk about overcoming this hurdle, big hurdle of the governance and the equal distance of the system from all religions, actually. This is what they call it to be, at equal distance, the governance equal distance from all parts of the religious spectrum. Also, Commander Abdullah Al-Hulu was talking, one of the other issues is the regional governance. Because they were raising the issue of self-determination, or now nobody's talking about this. So this means they want to be in the United Sudan. But he raised the issue of the regional governance, which means restructuring of the government to the three levels. I am not sure whether he was talking about abolishing completely the states and replacing it by the regions, 6 or 8 regions. What about this issue, about the governance of Sudan? What is its effect on the coherence and solidarity and the peace in Sudan?
Thank you very much, General Omar. The issue of governance is one of the biggest issues in Sudan. It keeps repeat itself from time to time since independence up to now, and it haven't been resolved. In a sense, if you remember, Nimeri regime introduced what he called the regional government. It's a kind of federalism. And then when Enghad regime, they came with their model, or they call it the federation. Both of them haven't been implemented in a faithful way. It was very kind of distortion for a federation. It is really an issue that is still pending and need to be resolved. If you remember, in a first episode you received me here, I spoke about the fact that Sudan, as a modern country, have been created by colonials. And no region in Sudan have been consulted whether to be part of centralized government or not. And I think the issue of federalism needs to be open for a wide consultation for all Sudanese, whether Darfur, Kordofan, Eastern Sudan, Northern Sudan, or Eastern Sudan, Blue Nile, and Nuba Mountains, to be open for all, and let people talk and decide what kind of federalism they want, what kind of governance they want. Because for me, the federation we have inherited from the Ingas, or the collapsed regime, the outstate regime, is very distorted kind of system. And at the same time, it has been created and implemented for a certain goal, for the regime to maintain power and to continue on power. It was based on divide and rule policy.
Divide and rule.
Divide and rule policy. The states, the localities, all these have been
Tailored.
demarcated and tailored to
Tribalism.
cope with this policy, because it was tailored along ethnic and tribal basis. So if you look to the states, it represents tribes. If you look to it represents ethnicities. If you look to localities, it represents tribes or sub-tribes.
Yes.
How can you implement revolution values, the revolutionary values raised by the Sudanese revolution in 2019 with this crafts kind of
Cannot work.
structure? It cannot work. So this structure needs to be changed totally.
Completely.
And then people should sit down and come up with a concrete with new structures with the consensus of all the Sudanese people.
It's very,
Yeah.
very interesting, Ahmed Farouk. I think you have something to say about it. Do you agree with him? I agree. I myself agree.
I will say it another way.
Okay.
I never believed that there was a united Sudan. Let us say it like this. Under a central government, there was never been a united Sudan. We've been in civil war for a very long time. So I cannot say that people in Abyei or in Juba, they feel that they are belong to the government of Khartoum among their life when it was one state or one
country.
That was actually an effort to build this state. And the colonial for sure played a big role that it gave us this is border as many people think. But this is not all thing about Sudanese people. We are here. We have been here for 7 years old of history of civilization. We should know this. And might be the social and our integration, if it went in our inside conflict, we might have a larger country even including, and we talk a lot here about the regional integration like Horn of Africa and many of African liberation movement. Actually, when we talk about the phenomenon of post-colonial state and the actually syndrome of national colonialism, because this is how the national government been since 1950s and the independence, and I name it the first independence because it comes with many actually many problems on it and conflicts that not sorted by the national class and Sudanese, not Sudanese, all of those leaders who brought that independence. Among the history, you can see many models that show how this is being deviated from liberation and from equality and equity. All the slogan for freedom and for independence was not there in the national state for the last decades. And this is why we have now, this is like a model of second independence. So if we look at Sudan now, and if we look at many countries, and even in South Sudan, we cannot even say these are two countries, because if we can see how we've been bonded together, how we run our own interests together, and how this will not change, because this is the geography. We're still together and we're still on the same region. We can think in another way, democratization and the transitions, if succeed in, because all of these areas are in transition, by the way, political status. Succeed to bring democracy, succeed to address the issue of governance and the local governance, not the central governance and the previous way of political operations that only we have from in the modern national state here. I guess there will be a goodwill for unity and a goodwill for having Sudanese people in equal and equity, and we have justice everywhere. Even the economic should be developed. By the way, we are dividing in our cities. If you look at Khartoum here, this division in the whole country is here in Khartoum. We can see center of Khartoum is large different from areas that even named the Galona, and you know the names itself reflect a conflict, by the way. And this is actually picture you will see it in every city, in every town in Sudan. Yeah, and you can find such ununited people, ununited communities. They are divided everywhere. In fact, the city in Sudan being developed not as a development project or not as something that reflects the collective interest of people rather than a privilege actually for certain classes that connected with the power itself. So this is something we
So you
should
think it is better
address.
to go for larger units
Yeah, for
in
sure.
governance rather
And
than.
this is need a will and need actually from the political class, not something that we make it just for accident, something that somewhere could be done, not by the international committee, should be our own
Our
wills.
own concern. That's good. That is very good. So we all agree that going for larger units of governance is always better. At
Yes.
least it will dilute the bitterness of the tribalism and racism, and it will definitely be something good for the unity of the country. What was Muhammad Farouk was saying, it is our role in Sudan to look down to Sudan to solve these small problems. We cannot wait to others to come and solve our own problems. That is what Muhammad Salman is saying. Okay, if we go to Dr. Zuhair about now having started the talks, peace talks, new talks, definitely there are some sticky areas. Like, for example, which one do you think it will take time to be resolved or to be agreed upon? Like, for example, is the security modalities, for example, or the economic, the sharing of wealth and power. So there are some issues which will be a little bit difficult to resolve. In my mind, I think the security, major security, which will include the security, as you know, to the DDR,
Yeah.
demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration.
Reintegration.
This is DDR. It was one of the issues in the Juba, the last agreement. It was not well resolved because it allowed this process of DDR about 33 months. 33 months cannot wait. Even the traditional governance is not 33 months now, by now. That's why nothing has been done on the ground to resolve this issue. This I am talking about the previous, the other peace agreement which was signed on October 2020. Now they will come to the same point. What do you think will be a difficulty in these talks? Will this same issue will be a problem?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. Yes, for me, I think the security arrangement will be the very big obstacle. First, because, on my own opinion, the security issue is the biggest issue in Sudan. Because all these problems, for example, if you look to the economic crisis, if you look to transitional justice, if you look to other issues of IDPs and refugees, all these issues somehow are related to security issues. Unless you resolve this key issue, you cannot move to the others. And for Abdulaziz, Mr. Abdulaziz Al-Hulu, I can see he put it at the top of his priority. It's true he was talking about the issue of identity and the separation of religion and state, but it's equally he put this at a very top level. He will put it during the negotiation, and he put it in his speech. And I think he has a lot to learn from Juba and the implementation of the Juba Agreement. Because up to now, since Juba Agreement has been signed, we are now about
7 months.
7 months. 7 months, and the security agreement hasn't been started yet.
Not yet, yes.
Yeah. So with this delay in the security arrangement, lot of other issues have been delayed. And the peace agreement implementation looks like on halt. So I think Abdulaziz will take that lesson and will learn from that lesson and will insist the issue of the security to be resolved in a very practical way, not only on the papers, but with a very strong assurances, and then you can move forward.
So also he talked also about the transitional justice. He said the
And justice,
yes,
both.
they
He
said
addressed it in his
in his
speech
speech
in the opening ceremony of the
that
talk. He said it for it. He said they are willing to have a settlement with the transitional government, yes, but he mentioned the violation happened during these 2 years under this government, the delay of justice. He mentioned these things that show, and let me just come to the security arrangement and
Okay,
the
okay,
point
okay,
is being
okay.
stated by my colleague here. From the number one, we should remember, SPLM has a large experience and specialized memory regard negotiation and talk and national dialogue, because this is a history since 1955 being actually transferred through these generations of, let us name them as we've been thinking, as we consider them rebels. This is a longer struggle for those peoples. For Nuba Mountain, it's been part of this struggle 1983, later, not earlier, from the beginning of our independence. And from the beginning also we should recognize that Al-Hilo was never in hurry for security arrangement. He said we should agree first in the political issues, then we shall come to the security arrangement. And this is actually according to any peace talk for in any experiment in the world, and you might highlight this better than me. This is how we should go. Then we're not just fighting like mafia. There is a political issue that leads for this fight and for this war. So we should address the war issues. We should make an agreement on this. And he stated clearly that the secularism, because of considering religious still as one of the elements that divide Sudanese people. By the, it even divides the Muslim people from other Muslims. Yeah. And I was with Al-Mahboub in a convention that I said, why we think that we have to go for secularism just for the sake of blessing Abdulaziz Al-Hilo. Abdulaziz Al-Hilo himself is Muslim, and we are Muslims. It's not something against Islam at all, by the way. And this is how actually it's been reflected well in the declaration of principle signed by Al-Hilo and Burhan. And this is good because we need to come out of this. This is a historical experience for Sudanese people. We should to come to develop a modern state. We should know how the religious being actually located in a state. If you are coming from Europe and other countries, it's not a conflict anymore. Actually, in the society, it is one of the things that connect and bond people with each other for the good conscience that it address a religious as religious. It's not something bad, that it should be a value add. It should be something enriching us, not putting us in such a conflict. Second things, I do believe, because of how the model was, either you agree on this issue or we have the self-determination right. And by the way, self-determination right is a right. Ever you have a weapon, but it's a democratic right. If we exercise and practice democracy for a long time, like in Canada, like for Scotland inside Great Britain, they can call for it without raising their arm or weapons, because this is something we shouldn't just be afraid of it or deal with it as something that it's the only way for having our country fragile or divided. Our country actually is fragile and divided and not united yet. But we cannot address the issue of unity of our country through the self-determination, because it happened with South Sudan and it's solved no problem in South Sudan or in North Sudan, by the way, if we look at it. So it's not a security arrangement. If you can remember today, I think most of those army of the Juba Agreement, its first version, make a statement that for 7 months, security arrangement, nothing being done through them. And for Al-Hilo now, because the two models for the CBA, the last 2005 agreement, because of how it was, there was self-determination. Arrangement was not clear, by the way, for the joining the army and making a one national army, and this is why the SPLM earlier in 2005 kept its forces, and also the Sudan government, and they start like a unit that to start merging the army, but both sides were not serious about this, because actually their choice was the independence of South Sudan. They both, NCP and SPLM, agreed on this, led by Salfa and led by al-Bashir here. Now, the political will towards unity, as far as we agree on the political conditions and the constitution way of making Sudan clear, we need a one national army. And this should not be a security arrangement. It should be security reforming and structuring. This is how it should be addressed in this talk. We have to go for a wider and inclusive model of talking, because if I want, I'm not just going to join the SPLM, and this is very, by the way, big army, not like most of those peoples or of this movement came now. And one of the issues that is still hidden, we should address it, by the way, the division inside SPLM itself, because in Noba there is another SPLM, and in Blue Nile there is another SPLM led by Malik Agar. This is internal conflict will appear. Devil will show on details, by the way. I'm so optimistic, but I don't think this is just something we came here for this talk, just for the procedure talk, and just like Sudanese people, you go to propose to a lady and you just get the wedding done. It will not be like this. There's a lot of things should be done. We should actually talk to, frankly, and address these issues. We cannot have three army in Nuba Mountain. One belong to Jalab, one belong to Al Hilu, and another. Though the majority is Al Hilu, by the way, and but SPLM, as well as its experience in the Nifasha, it been united before they went to the talk. Riyak Mashar fiction joined Garang, and that was a great step from Garang to have them united before the peace talks there in Nifasha. They have to do, we have to address this. We have to address it together, because now there is no NCB government or a tolerant government. This is transitional. We should see each one role, each one without obstacling or without actually making, this is way of doing transition since the beginning up to now, with many difficulties, with many inefficiency, by the way, in many aspects, economical aspect, even in justice aspect, and this was actually something very big, and we should blame ourselves for how still death and killing continued. I remember I let me quote for a woman in Darfur in Guinea 1 year ago, when that massacre happened there, and they came to the media, asked her, what do you think? She said, my son, just let me ask one question before anything. You have been saying, and we all believing, that al-Bashir was killing us. Bashir went. Who is killing us now? And this is the question we should answer. As, now we are responsible of that. We should carry this.
That's a very deep question. Yep. That's a deep question. Okay, Dr. Zuhair, this is very touching. This who is killing these people? I myself, I'm not sure. Somebody is doing the killing. Anyhow, in the Security Council in Resolution 2524, it urged Sudan and Sudanese faction and insurgents in different fronts to do enough in the peace process. And Donald Bush, the American envoy, also urging that, which he said we should not destroy or destruct or stop or put hurdles to the peace process which is going on. So there is an important dimension to these talks. It is closely followed by the international community, represented by the United Nations and America itself. And it seems that America is very much this time, very much serious and keen about resolving the conflict in Sudan, about having full democratic transformation and civilian governance in a peaceful Sudan. So these are signals, important signals. What do you think the effect of this, the involvement of the international community in the peace talks, with some regard to what Mohammed Farouk Najir said about the hurdle or the issues, the difficulty which will come, one of which is the transitional justice. These people, they feel that they have grievances from the hostage regime. 2 years now, nothing was done in this direction, and the transitional government is not doing enough. Will this be another hurdle to the conclusion of an agreement with Al-Hilo?
Thank you very much. Before I go to this question, I just want to make a comment on Muhammad Farouk. Thanks to Muhammad Farouk. He was talking about the security reforms rather than security arrangements. And I mentioned security arrangements. I mentioned security arrangements because it is there in the agreements. It's also all the security reforms and other security issues comes under this title, security arrangement. Even if you go to Juba agreement, you will find security arrangement, and under it, then you will find talk about the security reform, military, police, and others. So that's why I mentioned security arrangements. So by security arrangements, I mean all this together. And it's still important because it, as I mentioned before, it relates to all other issues. You cannot address the economic crisis unless you resolve the security issue. You cannot address the issue of transitional justice unless you address the security issue. What is going on in Al Junaina and in Niyala and other places, and even last time in Khartoum and yeah, in Khartoum and in Eastern Sudan last year, all these issues has something to do with the security. So unless you resolve this issue of security, because you cannot identify where is the armed forces, Sudan armed forces. You cannot differentiate Sudan armed forces from other militias. So do we have a unified Sudan armed forces? Nobody can answer this question. Unless you have a unified Sudanese armed forces that recognized and admitted and respected by all spectrums, all the actors, all the political parties, all the Sudanese people, you cannot go an inch on the security issue. So you, let alone you have many militias, and some of these militias are recognized by the state, others are not recognized, and still the situation remains chaos. Going to your question with regard to the role of the international community, I think the role of the international community is very vital. And by the way, they have done their homework.
The exercise.
Yeah, actually they have done it. Because America lifted all the sanctions, and last time, if you can see, it's already announced in the official journal. The France helped and organized that conference with regard to the economical support and the clearance of the debts. The German before them have also hosted a conference last year, in support of Sudan. So they have done a lot. If we internally we have done the work that have been done by the international community, would have long been departing this what do you call it, station. But unfortunately, we as Sudanese, our transitional government failed to do their homework, and they have to work hard to do it. I know they have done a lot, they are trying their best, but unless this work is reflected in two issues, nobody can appreciate it. It has to reflect in the economic, and people can feel that the economic situation is getting better. It has to be reflected in the security, and people feel that security is getting better. Otherwise, no credit will be given.
This is very important. Okay. Yeah. This is so as if it's saying that the international community already did more than what expected, and now it's the role of the Sudanese people inside to have these two issues to be addressed. First is the security arrangement. Security arrangement, you reiterated this woman in Darfur who said previously you are talking to us that al-Bashir was killing us. Now who is killing us? Now al-Bashir is also. This is very deep expression by this lady. So being right in the middle of the incubator, or you
previously, but for sure now we've been still connected with
who is minding the store now? Who is minding? Who is doing this? Why security arrangement? Why you cannot reach security?
I do believe if we look, we've been talking together about the phenomenon of post-colonial state and the lack of actually vision in Sudanese class. This is, by the way, from the beginning, from the first generation and the fathers of our nation, of our independence. They never have this vision. We have here, if we can see, the people in Sudan said, sorry, we don't have army. You cannot make an army feeling this guilty towards a greatest job. You defend the people. You play the role of keeping them secure. And your people think of you that you've been fighting only Sudanese people. You've been part of the operation, the political operation, and other things like this. We want to clear this, and this should be done through a vision. So I do agree with you. Not just an agreement, an arrangement that goes through the DDR. It is something need a political vision, need a constitutional commitment to restructure and to remake a new actual beliefs inside this army, and to launch it to his people as it's part of its national security strategy and backbone of this. This is how we can go for one army, and how we can stop this violation and violence being committed by our own, by the way, forces, by our own military forces. This is something we cannot just address it by having a power sharing model of agreement, and by sticking on sharing power and wealth like in Nifasha. This is something should address the issue, as Al-Hilu is saying, as Abdul Wahid is saying, and even as we being saying in FFC, we want to solve how Sudan should be ruled.
So the onus now, like what I understood, the onus of fulfilling this security arrangement is in the military component, definitely. And
No,
the onus,
no. Let us say it different way.
Okay.
If we talk about civil state, by the way, military component is part of the civil state.
Yes.
People should come out of this misleading statement. And this is very important. So how to have this, doing this jointly,
But
this is the issue. This will solve
this
it.
is actually Muhammad Farouk. Actually, yes, we know this
They are
is
part of Sudan.
Theoretically, yes, it is civil. But actually, we are not feeling this. People are not feeling this. We have to be frank. We have
Yeah,
to
I
be-
do agree with you, because
People are not feeling
always
this.
the negotiation is between the government and the armed groups. So unless you have the arms, nobody can listen to you.
Yes.
And this is a very bad impression.
Anyhow,
Yeah,
it seems that we are short of time because the issues raised were very hot and important. So we hope we have to maybe see you again, because the issue maybe after the resumption of talks on Monday. So we have few days after that. Maybe some things will
Will be
change,
clear, and we'll
will
see
be clearer.
what can
So we can come and go about it. Thank you, dear viewers, for being with us in the last hour in this hot issue of the new negotiations started in Juba last week between SPLM North, Commander Abdelaziz Al-Hilu, and the transitional government of Sudan. Hope to see you next week in the same or other issue of the week. Thank you.